So usually when you start your first full-time job, there's a couple of things that happen. You'll end up with this weird sense of competition with your other co-workers. You'll see the cars they drive, the things they wear, and you'll feel like this weird sense of competition. You're like, I need to do that too. I need to show them that I've got resources, I've got a bit of money. Or at least that's what I was like anyway. And this is, I think, perfectly natural because we are naturally quite competitive. If you think about it, when we were hunter-gatherers, I don't know how many years ago, 5,000 years ago, let's say. No, it was probably a bit longer than that. Well, let's say it was 5,000 years ago. And it was the difference between hunting a deer or something like that, or starving. And let's say your mate, who's in the other tribe, so he's probably not your mate, but your enemy is in the other tribe. And he also would like the deer. That causes a problem. Now, we obviously don't have that in today's world because we have an abundance of calories, we have an abundance of food. I think every single person living is an example of that. To gain weight, it's very easy in today's world. And that's not an excuse for obviously not being in shape. And it's an excuse that I've used before, but it's not an excuse. We have an abundance of calories in our diets and we can access as much food as we need. So therefore the question comes, well, what the heck is it that we're competing for as human beings? What the heck is it that we're actually scrounging around for and working so hard for? Well, it's usually status signaling symbols like watches, cars, houses, and people tend to try and afford bigger and better versions of those things. So this Casio watch is a £10 watch. It is as perfectly good as a Rolex. The only difference between a Rolex and my £10 Casio watch, even though I was informed yesterday when I was at a wedding that I could get it for £6, so again, I didn't even get the best deal on it. The only difference between a Casio and a Rolex is how much status it gives you. And I've sort of grappled with this topic for a lot of time because does that aid in your survival? Does having more status aid in your survival? Assuming you can pay your basic bills, assuming your rent is covered, assuming you are just about running your car, hopefully you're not in debt to do these things, but some people are in debt, so I understand that. So obviously you want to work a plan to get out of debt and things like that to make life more comfortable. But let's say you're covering your basics and you're living and you're staying alive and you have some nice things that happen to you in life or whatever, some nice moments happen. What the heck else do you want? That Rolex, I don't think is going to improve your life all that drastically. I think there's a sort of limit. I think between having access to £0 and £1 million, everybody has pretty much access to those sort of resources. It's really the sort of 100 million plus that not a lot of people see. So that's when you have access to private jets and access to yachts. But again, you only need those things if you're working in multiple countries at once in one day. And you only need those things really if you have way too many friends. For a yacht, for instance, and you want to throw a big party for whatever reason. And again, it's the same with private jets. You don't really need a private jet unless you are working in multiple countries. So there's literally no point in it for most people. For 99.999% of people, there's genuinely no point in private jets. or anything like that. And I'm not saying don't be ambitious. Obviously be ambitious, but like there is a sort of tier system to these things where it only makes sense to have these things if you really need them. So most people, they just need a house, they need a mode of transportation or a way to get to their work, and they need some food. That's all they need. And then you need some entertainment. So great free way of getting entertainment is through YouTube. It's what I've done for years now. I don't really use Netflix. I've never had a Netflix subscription. I've never had a Spotify subscription. Or Amazon Prime or anything like that. I just sort of go on YouTube because I find ample entertainment there. And so, again, it's about what you need. And this is something that I've really grappled with recently because I went through about a 6-month period of just buying the most random stuff. So I built my watch collection to 12 watches. Ooh, some arbitrary figure that I had in my head that I wanted to get to. Some made up number that seemed to make a difference to me. I got all of the clothes I ever wanted to buy. So I think when I was in university, I didn't want to spend too much money on clothes or anything like that. I tended to shop in charity shops. So I went through this period of time recently where I bought loads of like really nice clothes, all designer brands. And I got to the end of it and realised I've not done this for myself. What I've done this for is to impress other people. And you'll probably be vibing with that a little bit right now where you're going, oh yeah, I do that quite a lot. And I think the point to all of this is that I think some people need to go through that process. I think everybody needs to go through some kind of process. I think everybody needs to go through that process at some point in their life of making mistakes and yeah, just trying things out and figuring out whether what they're doing is right for them. You know, it's the only way that we really progress in life is by trying new things, of course. And I just sort of caught myself out, like, why the heck am I doing this? And then realised it was because I was surrounded by people in a job. But then I also caught myself thinking that long term, for the rest of my life, I don't want to work a job. I don't want to be surrounded by people who are swimming in credit card debt, who can't afford their mortgages, who, you know, have their car on finance. I don't want that life. So therefore, why am I living up to their standards? Because their standards have got them their results. Like, they can't afford to go out and spend £300 on a jacket. You know, I can financially spend £300 on a jacket. It does not affect me whatsoever. But these people would, for the same jacket, probably put it on a credit card and go into debt for it, or pay it off over you know, a monthly period. In fact, one of my co-workers asked me for £500 and he said, look, can I pay you back over the next 3 months? Because it was something to do with his credit. It was like they wouldn't lend to him because he hadn't been in the UK for like more than 3 years, so that he didn't have any ability to get like a credit card or anything on credit. I'm going to keep him anonymous, but he came to me and asked for £500 because he knew that I could give him £500 and asked to pay it back over 3 months. And I was like, no. And I explained to him, like, I wasn't like as direct to say like, no, don't do that, but I was quite like, hey, you know, you're making a mistake here. Like, not because you're asking me. Sure, I can give you the £500, but it's about what you're teaching yourself. Is that you will just teach yourself that you can borrow money for the rest of your life, and you can get the things that you want, and you just borrow money to get them. And really, I think what I've learned from that is how easy it is for people to just assume that they can just borrow money to get the things that they want. And now I've never gone into debt. I don't even have a credit card. I've never had a car on finance or anything like that. And my life is 10 times easier than I think most people's because I'm not swimming in payments. And most people bring it upon themselves just by bringing more stuff into their life. That's fundamentally what happens, is that they want more stuff and then they bring it into their life. And they just have this obsession with things. I mean, you might be watching this going, that's me. And if that is you, try and get rid of small things first. Try and get rid of like stuff that you haven't used in 6 months. Maybe some clothes that you haven't worn in 6 months. Just start off small with that little process of just being detached from things and being like, yeah, no, I can throw this away. Yeah, I just think it's important to not put yourself in golden handcuffs because you make your life so much easier. Like the same people who have their financed cars and everything on a credit card call me crazy for getting a meal prep service for £60 a week. They're like, why are you doing that? It's like, because I can afford to, and it makes my life way better and way easier. They're like, oh, no, I wish I could do that. I wish I had the money to do that. And it's like, you do have the money to do that, but you chose to spend that money on a car. You chose to spend that money on your credit card, on debt. You have that money. You just chose to spend it in a different way. That's all it is. You know, if I want my meals cooked for me in a meal prep service, I bloody well can. If I want my house cleaned for £20 a time, I'm going to pay that because it saves me the time to do it, obviously. When most people are like, I wish I could afford that. It's like, you can. You genuinely can afford to outsource these rubbish tasks that you do in a day, but you choose not to because you choose to have a car. You choose to have loads of jewellery on credit cards. I don't know what people put on credit cards, but I've never had one. And it's just beggars belief, is what my mum would say. It's beggars belief. Um, Now, I understand that everybody's lives are different. I understand that. And I understand that we all have different priorities. And I understand that some people have kids, so they need a car, 100%. But if you're going to complain about not having time, not having energy, and not having focus, and yet don't invest into your health, or don't invest into freeing up your time, then you are going to get the results that you're getting, which is you're tired, you're struggling to make good food, you resort to eating junk food because it's quick and easy. You can just solve that problem by buying a meal prep service. But most people don't see the benefit to that because it's so countercultural to what they've grown up with that they go, well, why would I do that when I've spent all this time learning to cook? It's like, it's not really the point. We're not saying that you're a bad cook or a bad chef. We're just saying that you probably don't have the time to do it after working 8 hours in a day and traveling, an hour to and from work. It's quite normal, isn't it? It's quite logical. In fact, if you work effectively 9 hours, you probably don't have the energy and time to cook for yourself. Not, and even if you do, it's just more work. So now you're working 10, 11-hour days because you're adding in the time that it takes to cook and clean up after. No wonder people are tired and stressed and depressed. If you just take away some of that burden and find ways to free up your time, then your life becomes better. And along with that, of course, it's not needing so much stuff. So I have a very unstressful and undepressing life because I don't need stuff. I don't fill my life full of crap. And if I do have something that needs doing, that takes my time and attention, I will just pay somebody else to do it. Because I don't want that responsibility. Ultimately, it's the same with driving. Like, I can drive. I'm insured on my dad's car, so I do sometimes use my dad's car. But the majority of the time, I just take Uber. You know why I take Uber? Because I don't want the liability of having a car that I need to maintain and insure and oh my goodness, whatever else. And I also don't need it too much. Like, if you get a meal prep service, you don't need to go to the supermarket because your food is already prepared for you. If you have a cleaner, you don't need to go and get cleaning supplies. If you have a gardener, you don't have to, I don't know, go to the waste management centre to get rid of your garden waste. Very straightforward. So a lot of people would say, oh, well, it sounds like you live a very sort of consumerist lifestyle. It's like, no, the opposite. The opposite. The reason why I have these things sorted for me and I pay, good money to get them sorted is because I am happy living on less. And so, again, it's very difficult to explain this in a sort of 9 till 5 situation. It's probably why I don't suit the whole 9 till 5 job thing. Because everybody's mindset is just very different. And that's okay. And that's probably why I'm making these videos, because I'm hoping that through making these videos, I will find like-minded people who live on less they make, live on less than they make. So that's number one. Number two, who don't have a problem outsourcing the rubbish tasks in their life because they are wanting to save that time in order to pursue something bigger and better. And also people who will purchase quality items rather than lots of quantity of rubbish. Anyway, that's aside. I'm going to end the video there because, well, yeah, I have nothing more to say. Not now anyway, I'm sure I will have something more to say in future.